So thank you everybody for being here. We're really excited to have our presenter with us. And I'm just going to go over a few things real quick before we jump in. Welcome. I am Shannon Anichetti. I work with More Career Services, which is the career services support for our business students. And we're really happy to be hosting this. A couple of housekeeping rules. If you have any technical issues throughout the webinar, please use the chat function to message me. I'll be moderating that and help try and field any issues that arise. For any questions that you might have for Llyswen, our presenter, please put those in the Q&A box. We will likely wait till the end to get to those, which is roughly 20 minutes in. We'll have Q&A, so feel free to pop those in and we'll answer them at the end. If there's any pressing questions, I certainly will bring them up, but likely we'll wait to the end. And again, you can put them in at any time during the presentation. Just a quick shout out to who we are. So More Career Services, as I mentioned, is the career services for business students. And right now, I know things feel really different in the world, but we're still here to support you. We have a lot of virtual ways to engage during this time. So this is just a quick snapshot of some of those. We'll also share this information with folks who have registered afterwards on a little survey, but this is essentially our website. So check it out. We have a lot of ways to engage with you really from the hours of 10 to 4 every day, whether that's chatting, whether that's an appointment or a quick drop-in, all of those things to support any of your career needs. Now on to our presenter, Llyswen. I'm going to read a little bit about Llyswen and then we'll get started. So Llyswen is a motivated and energetic consultant who has experience with both commercial and nonprofit organizations, developing strategies for project success, team engagement, and coming up with and implementing new initiatives are some of her areas of interest. Her passion for sustainability, both in an environmental and social perspective, was fortified by her background of serving as an AmeriCorps member in the education field, working in healthcare technology and earning a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Sciences from OSU and an MBA in Sustainable Business from the University of Oregon. So we are very excited to have you with us, Llyswen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And I am just gonna page up because we are at the end of the.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. At the beginning, you just had a preview. All right, so thank you, Shannon. As she mentioned, my name is Llyswen Berna, and I am currently an associate consultant with Pepper Foster, and I have been for about a year. I graduated from OSU with a degree in environmental science back in 2013, and then I went on to serve with College Possible as an AmeriCorps member, where I helped low-income students get ready for the ACT and college, and then a year later, all of the students that I was working with did actually end up getting into a 4-year school, so that was really exciting. After I was with College Possible, I moved on to working with Epic, which is a healthcare technology company. It's the technology that your doctors use to enter your details onto their charts, so it's that technology. And my job was I was quality assurance, so I was testing software. I found myself wanting to go back to sustainability and go back to the West Coast because Epic was out in Wisconsin. So I decided to start looking at graduate programs, and that's when I found the UO Green MBA. And when I was there, it had just been named the #1 Green MBA in the country, so that was really exciting. So I applied, and I loved my time there. I graduated back in 2018. And after I graduated UO, I then applied and luckily got accepted to Pepper Foster Consulting, which is a small consulting firm up here in Portland. It's management consulting, and it's one of the few consulting firms that focuses on local clients instead of clients around the country. So I have no travel. It's just commuting to my client, which is within Portland. And right now, there's no commuting involved at all. Just to give you kind of a sense of how I got all of those jobs, because I know when I was a student, that was always a question I had was, how did you get these jobs? So my college possible one, that was just an app. I went to a career fair, I met a representative, and I filled in an application. Easy as that. Epic was through a referral from a friend. She had asked for my resume just for her sake, as because it looked good for her to refer more people to the company. And then I was lucky enough that it panned out and landed me a really great job. And then with Pepper Foster, when I was in grad school with the MBA, I actually applied to a lot. That was the time in my life where I applied to the most jobs. And when I was there, it was all about networking and making sure you had the right connections. But the two jobs that I was actually offered coming out of the MBA program, both of them were cold applications, which I always thought was really interesting. So Pepper Foster was actually just a LinkedIn position that I saw. LinkedIn is my go-to for figuring out finding new jobs and new resources. So that's a little bit about how I got those and where I am right now. All right. So a little bit about what it's like being a consultant. I've been with Pepper Foster about 1.5 years now. And also during my MBA, I was doing a bit of consulting work. So I've been kind of in and out of consulting for the past 2 or 3 years. So here's a couple of things that I wanted to kind of highlight about what I found people don't really talk about as much when you're asking them about what it means to be a consultant. One of the big things is relationships. It's really crucial that you are able to build a good relationship with your client, because as a consultant, you're not there for a long time. And you need to build that trust quickly so that you're able to show your value to your client as fast as possible, so that they want to work with you in the future, and that you can show that you are a valuable asset to that company. Another thing, consulting hours are really difficult. So I have to bill 40 hours a week to my client. That's an expectation from my firm, but also there's additional work internally for Pepper Foster that's optional, but I really enjoy doing it. So I have to choose, do I want to spend additional hours and help improve my consulting firm and help potentially gain more opportunities for promotions and bonuses or learning experiences, those types of things. So life as a consultant is definitely not a 40-hour gig if you want to, if promotion and recognition and going up the pipeline is your goal. Every client I've had has been different so far. So just to give you an idea, I started out with my Pepper Foster engagement. I started out at Nike in their social community impact department, and I was working with the strategy director there, kind of figuring out their plan for 2020, because this was last year. I then moved on to Daimler, which is a trucking company, and I was doing records management for them, and they were implementing a new records management software program. So that was a very different opportunity, and something that I had no background in. So that was a get onto the project and learn as you go. I then came off of Daimler earlier this year, and I worked for Fall Creek Nursery, which is actually down in Eugene. It's actually in Lowell, but they say it's in Eugene, so it's easier for people to know where it is. And we were helping them with their long-term strategy plans. And that was my favorite project by far, because learning about strategy and how you can help form a company for the next 5 years was amazing. And I was able to work with some more experienced team members from Pepper Foster who had been doing this for 20 or 30 years. And so it was a really great learning experience. And then I am currently back at Nike, but I'm in their technology department helping mitigate some risks that they have right now. So all of my projects have been very, very different, but I have been able to bring lessons learned from each one to the next ones. And last year I gave a webinar to some other U of students, some of the MBA students, and I had just started my job, and I was a little not confused, but a little unsure of what consulting life really was. And now I've had that extra year of experience, and I've really come into my own and understood, like, okay, this is how consulting is and how it's going. So that was really interesting. With consulting, there are so many opportunities to learn and contribute. And whether that's if you're on a client site and you find areas where they are lacking and it wasn't necessarily part of the job that they hired you for, but it's an area where you have expertise and you can help them, and you say, hey, I know you didn't hire us to fix this process, but we've identified some issues here that we could potentially streamline for you. That's always a great opportunity and adding value to your client. But what I found specifically is within Pepper Foster, and this goes along with the next point, Pepper Foster is a very small company. When I started in January of 2019, and there were 11 people in the company. There are now 30 of us, so it's grown substantially in the past year and a half. But with that small company, it means you have access to leadership. So from day one, I had the founder's ear on any issues that I was interested in bringing up or working on. And so last year in June, so it's just about a year coming up now, I started the sustainability program within our firm. And because that was my passion area, and I wasn't able to bring it to a lot of my projects because there just isn't a lot of sustainability work that consultants are needed for in Portland at the moment. And so I was like, okay, I want to find my passion area. I want to still make sure that I'm able to pursue this. So I brought it to the firm. And within this past year, we have managed to get our office certified by the city of Portland as with the Sustainability at Work Silver certification. And then I heard maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that we've actually been named as one of Oregon's 100 best green companies to work for, which was very exciting. And I like to think due to my work, because without the ability to start this sustainability group, we would not have made any of those initiatives come to be. So there's that. I also, in addition to my sustainability work, I was able to join the culture and community group. So I was able to help plan events when those were still happening, and really get to know the Pepper Foster team. And it's so nice to have coworkers who are going through similar situations that you're going through, but at different client sites. So you're not working together on a day-to-day basis. You can talk to each other about your issues that are coming through, and it just creates this wonderful team environment. So that's one of those really big benefits of being a consultant, I think. All right, what's next? So I just wanted to make sure I have an audience of college students. I wanted to bring my words of wisdom to you guys. So one of the things, and I mentioned this earlier, networking is important, but it's not the only way to get a job. Networking was drilled into my head by my professors and my teachers and career services, and networking is very important. It has gotten me jobs in the past, and it got a lot of my peers jobs. But for me, I was able to get jobs on cold applications. So I just want to make sure that if you see a job and you think you're a perfect fit, but you have no way into that company, you should still apply. I think it's definitely still worth it. Another thing, especially coming out of undergrad, work-life balance is key. In college, you go home after class and you spend the night writing a paper or working on a project. Sometimes you're up way until early morning. When it's work and they're paying you, after 5 o'clock, you're done. Like there might be a couple of times where you need to work later for specific projects, but once you go home, you should have that boundary and say, all right, I am at home now. I had a really difficult time doing this the first couple of years out of college because I was so used to coming home and spending my evenings working that I kind of forgot to just live. And so that was something, especially just coming right out of college, make sure that you are recognizing that work is not college and you have to rebalance the way you live your life. Another one, never stop learning. I am constantly reading new articles about what's going on, looking for new trainings or certifications that I can get and earn. I am working with some of the more experienced people in my firm and learning from them and asking them for advice and mentorship, all of those things. So just because you're done with college does not mean you should stop learning. And big one here, you most likely won't get your dream job out of the gate, but that is totally okay, because every job that you have is going to give you some sort of learning lesson and some sort of experience that can lead to that dream job. Even if it was a negative working experience, you can say, you know what, I am never going to run a team that way again because it did not work. So even if it's failure, learn from your failure, but it's okay that you don't get your dream job out of college. Don't let that dishearten you, because I know that was a really tough sell for me. And the final thing that I wanted to share with you, this is actually something that came up during my interview at Pepper Foster. So during my interview, the founder of the company who was interviewing me put this list up on a board and said, choose 3. So you can either work 40 hours or less, you can have 1 hour of commute or less, you can have challenging and interesting work, you can have a good team, or you can have recognition and rewards. These are the 5 things that most people want out of a job, but most jobs are unable to provide all 5. And so I think I chose something, I was like, get rid of 40 hours or less, because I knew that I was going to be working more than that. I've never worked under 40 hours at a job before, so I was like, that's ridiculous. And then recognition and rewards, I was like, well, like, I don't need the pat on the back, you know? And his immediate response was, so I can work you like a dog and pay you nothing. And I was like, that is not what I said. That is not what I would expect from that. But this was something where when you're looking at jobs, and especially when you're interviewing and you have to ask questions about the company culture and what's happening and what it's like, these are just some things that I would say consider. And if you can get 3 out of the 5 or more, that's amazing. That's a good job. And it doesn't mean the job is perfect by any means, but it means that it just gives you another area for ranking that job and kind of figuring out, weighing your options. And that is all I have. Are there any questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we already have like 6 questions going, so super exciting. So I will start reading some of those off for you. And somebody has to leave pretty soon, so I'm going to read that question first. So this question was, the management consultant job description for Pepper Foster says at least 5 years of consulting experience within a reputable consulting firm. How did you move past that requirement to get hired?
So the management consultant position is different than the associate consultant position, is the answer. So with Pepper Foster, pretty much all of our positions are open all the time just because of the nature of consulting work. The management consultant, I guess I should have laid that out. So I am an associate consultant at the bottom level. Then you're a consultant. Then you're a management consultant. Then you become a principal. So that means that you are in charge of an actual whole account of work. So we have a principal who is in charge of all of the consultants who work at Nike. And then after the principal, that's when you become a partner. And we only have one partner of the firm, and that's our founder. So I am at the bottom as an associate consultant, and the associate consultant requirements were to have 0 to 2 years of job experience, preferably with an MBA, but the other 2 associates right now do only have bachelors in business. I will say that the associate consultant position has 4 levels within it, so it doesn't reflect in my title, but in the 4 levels, I was able, because I had my MBA, I was able to start at level 2. I wasn't at that bottom level. And when I got my promotion this year, I jumped a level, which is, it's not common to do. And I definitely believe that was because I had my MBA. So next year I'll be able to be a consultant, where sometimes it takes 4 years to become a consultant.
Super helpful. That's why the questions are so great. And that person clearly did their research too. So that was awesome. Yeah, that was Andrea, by the way. Okay, now we have 5 more so far. Folks watching, please feel free to keep popping questions as we're going. Okay, Amy, what are the biggest differences between working for profit and nonprofit organizations?
Yes. So obviously the biggest difference is money. And not just being like me being paid, but that you actually can see where nonprofits, I felt, and I have a lot of friends who have worked in nonprofits and they felt the same because I've had this conversation with them, where nonprofits, you have the wish and the motivation and the passion to do good, but you don't have the money to do good. Whereas in a large organization, a lot of the times they do have those funds. You have to be careful with the large organization that you're working for, because sometimes they don't use those funds how you would like. But that was when I was my first gig at Nike with Pepper Foster, working in their social community impact. That was actually part of what I was doing, was figuring out where funding was going and what nonprofits they were funding and what organizations they were doing. And so it was really amazing to see that this very large company was putting millions of dollars towards good things, because sometimes you only hear like bad things about these large companies and you're like, okay, they are doing some good in the world. I think nonprofit work is, you either kind of want to do it at the beginning of your career or at the end of your career. At the beginning, it gives you a lot of perspective. I found when I was working at College Possible, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I felt like I was really making a difference in the lives of the kids that I was working with. And I was young enough and I didn't have anyone who was relying on me for money, that it didn't matter that I wasn't earning a lot. I was, as an AmeriCorps member, you're on a stipend. So I wasn't earning anything. I paid rent and paid for food, and that was it. And so that experience, it was amazing. I loved it. I would never change it. But at this stage in my career, I would not be able to go back to that. I could also see later in life, after I've had years of experience and have a savings account where I'm like, okay, I can afford to take a pay cut, going back to the nonprofit sector and bringing all of that experience that I got from the for-profit sector and bringing it into a world that really needs that help.
Awesome. Great. Next question. What is the most interesting insight into the local market that you're able to share?
That's very difficult.
Loaded question, for sure.
Difficult question. Especially with the current situation. From what I've seen, I mean, it's not different than anywhere else. It's the travel industry, the hotel industry, any transportation is suffering a lot right now. I know that some of our current clients, Pepper Foster is very lucky that we have some clients that are pretty secure in their projects and their funding. So we're not, knock on wood, we're not being as impacted as we could by the current situation as others. But I have seen and heard from a lot of local organizations that are not doing so well. I'm trying to think. I might have to come back to this question.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, and
it's a big question.
It's a big question, so we can certainly come back to it. Okay, here are some more kind of like personal, dirty ones. As a new business school grad, how do you recommend that a person can exude confidence required to be a consultant? Is it like a fake it until you make it situation?
Yes. Confidence is key. That's actually when I was talking to the founder of Pepper Foster a couple weeks ago, because I was like, we only have 3 associates. We have a lot of consultants. We have a lot of managing consultants. And normally you have the most inexperienced, and then it kind of goes up and you trickle up. And I'm like, why do we only have 3 associates? He's like, because associates are so hard to find that are actually confident enough. And that's really key in consulting, is you have to be confident. And I was like, I was confident? Are you kidding me? I exuded confidence. And he was like, yeah, you're great. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, I was very nervous during that interview, so I'm glad that you thought I was confident. And it's one of those things where when you go into a meeting with a consultant, and this happens to me regularly, especially at the beginning of new projects, you have no idea what's going on. You're entering a team that has been working on something for a while, and they've called a consultant because it's not working well, or they're starting a new implementation. No one knows what's going on, but a lot of the times you're working with people who have worked in that company for 20 or 30 years, and you're the new person and coming in and saying, hey, change this, change that. And a lot of the times it's in a field that I had no background in. So when I was doing records management, I had no clue what that was. I didn't know what any of the terminology was. I didn't know what any of the software is. My current role at Nike involves a lot of coding. Not that I have to code, but understanding the coding process, which I have no background in whatsoever. So that's very challenging. And what I find the best thing to do is to come into the meeting, and if you don't understand something, make a note of it and look it up later. Don't necessarily, especially if it's your first couple of weeks on that client, don't bring it up in front of the client, because you don't want them to see that you're struggling that much. And most of the time it's a quick, what was that word that they were using? Oh, I got it. Let me understand what's happening here. And sometimes it is okay to admit when you don't know something, but say, you know what, I don't know the answer, but I will get back to you, especially if they're asking something of you and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, but I will research it and I will turn around and get back to you. And they appreciate those answers much better than if you just make something up and you're like, oh, well, I assume it's this and this and this. Admitting that you don't know the answer and that you will get back to them is very key, and give them confidence that you are trustworthy. And so it's all about gaining that confidence, the confidence of your clients.
Those are good skills even outside of consulting. So that's really good. Really good things to keep in mind. And it just really shows too that, you're proactive, you're willing to, like you said, continue to learn new things, continue to try and expand your knowledge, but also be of use. So I love those skills. Okay. Next question from Keith. What practices do you use to maintain your work-life balance?
So I try to set a time, and it can change depending on the situation in the day, but say after 6 o'clock, I am not looking at work emails. I'm not looking at my laptop. It's closed, all of that. That's my general rule, is after this, it's not happening unless there is a specifically urgent matter. I have worked in environments before, and that was one of the main reasons actually I left Epic, was I had 2 or 3 weeks where I was working 60 plus hours a week just because of the workload they put on me. And I was like, nope, this is not the job for me. If this is what you're expecting, you are not paying me enough for this. And that's when I was like, I'm going to apply for grad school. This is my deciding point. And so I also think that sometimes with work-life balance, you do as much as you can, but you also have to have the right company that you're working for. And you have to make sure that the company that you have chosen to work for does actually appreciate and respect work-life balance. That's something that I'm very lucky in with Pepper Foster. And then also with consulting, you have to be lucky enough with your client as well. So I was very lucky with Nike. They're very big on work-life balance. Pepper Foster is very big on work-life balance. Both of my teams check in regularly, especially now with the current situation, on people's mental states, making sure that everyone is okay and comfortable. And if you need to check in and just chat one-on-one, it's good. Or if you need to take half a day off just to have a breather, you're totally fine. I think that between those two, making sure that when you are interviewing with potential new jobs, asking them about how do they treat work-life balance, I think that's really important, as well as having those self-made boundaries, which I know is really hard. And I've had to kind of train myself to stop taking on additional work to maintain my work-life balance, because I was not good at it before. I was constantly taking on additional work, and I was like, no, I'm gonna set these aside. This is my time.
Yeah, it's that life skill that you learn over time, and as much as we try and help new students or grads realize that sometimes it's just life experience that helps you do that. Awesome. I just have to say, I really like what you had said earlier about that adjustment to work life outside of school. I hadn't really thought of that before. Like, oh yeah, you're used to always kind of working on school projects or doing things after class, but work is different and it's an adjustment. So that was a really good tip.
And it's definitely something that it took me a long time to come to terms with, and that I shouldn't be working after work hours, and that I was worth a certain amount. Like, they were paying me, and this is what they are paying me for. They're not paying me for overtime. They're not, because I was a salaried employee, so there's no overtime. There's nothing is beneficial for me to actually continue doing this work. So.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Next question. How do you show value and highlight your work when you are consulting for a company?
So when I'm showing value to Pepper Foster or showing value to the client?
Maybe it's kind of like how I would interpret this question, and feel free to elaborate on the question, Keith, if you'd like. But how I would interpret it is kind of, how are you in both ways, let's say, like to the company, what metrics or like stories do you tell that show and can serve, or techniques do you use that can serve as showing value to them? And then even how do you translate that back to Pepper Foster? Like, are there reports you have to give? Are there like check-ins that you do regularly? So I guess kind of both is how I would interpret that question.
Yeah, I can definitely answer it from both perspectives. So with my clients, I always try to identify a couple of hard copy things that I can provide them. So whether it's a PowerPoint deck or a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever the project requires, I try to say, hey, here's all the information so that you have it. It also is really helpful with when you leave the company, they have all that documentation. I also set up meetings with my stakeholders on a regular basis to make sure that I am meeting their expectations and that nothing has changed. It always changes. No matter what your project is, you come in expecting to do one thing, and during the course of your project, it will change scope to something completely different, or tangential, or they'll add something that changes a lot of what was going on. But to show that I'm giving value, I do have those conversations, and then I do try to provide that concrete evidence, because sometimes it's really hard. And my current role actually is an example of that, where it's hard for me to show what I've done, because it's been a lot of conversations with a lot of stakeholders right now. And so I'm actually putting together a document surrounding all of the information that I've learned, and that'll also help with the transition process when I leave, saying, here's all of the bullet points of all the conversations I've had so that you can clearly see what's happening. So that's kind of on the client side. And then on the Pepper Foster side, so this is another big thing with consulting, your manager doesn't work with you. They don't see what they don't have a clear line of sight into your work life. They don't see what you're working on the majority of the time. So how can they actually manage you? How can they evaluate your performance? What's happening? So we do all have managers, which I learned when I started in January last year was a new thing. Not everyone had managers previous to that, but as of when I started, everyone had managers. And I've actually had two in the course of the past year and a half, and I think it was a really good switch. They evaluated my personality a bit, and they were like, actually, we think you're a better fit for this manager, because we have very similar go-getting attitudes, and she has been able to coach me in the work-life balance area, which is definitely something that I work on daily. And so I meet with her on a monthly basis to just check in, go over all of my client work, as well as any internal work for Pepper Foster that I'm doing, so that she has a clear line of sight, as well as getting any advice from her on how to deal with certain issues. She also helps coach me on additional trainings that I might look into, things like that. Other areas of value with Pepper Foster, I am very involved with Pepper Foster because I do really enjoy that part of my job, as I mentioned, with the sustainability team, the events. I'm also working on some operational things for Pepper Foster. So I am constantly meeting with leadership. I'm constantly sharing documents and ideas with people, having conversations with people within Pepper Foster. So I am not concerned, and I have been told not to be concerned about my showing of value within Pepper Foster because it's such a small company, it's very visible, the work that you do. So it's not hard to show value within Pepper Foster. That does not mean within every company.
And I think that that's an important point, back to like selecting the company or asking questions during an interview, like thinking about those kinds of things, like what is the metrics for success that they're going to grade you on, and what are the things that they grade you on, like at school, you know?
And that's bringing up metrics for Pepper Foster specifically. They have clearly defined roles. So as I said, the associate consultant management. So I have clear goals for how to move to a consulting position, what I need to do, and that's some examples are the amount of hours you're billing, your engagement with Pepper Foster, your engagement with the community. They do expect you to volunteer in the Portland community, your ability to provide leadership to other consultants and mentorship to other consultants, and just experience levels. So it's really nice to have that clear expectations. And I think with any job, I've had that with previous jobs as well, is if you can ask, hey, can I see my career path? What's my potential career path? How do I go from this level to this level to this level? How do I get there? What do I need? Those qualifications and things like that. It's very helpful.
Nice. That's really helpful to know, because I'm sure probably not every consulting company is that clear.
Not every company is clear.
That's true. All right. Last question before we wrap up. Does an MBA make a difference when getting respect from a client?
I would say most of my clients don't even know I have an MBA, because I am just the consultant they hired. And I think that it gains respect within Pepper Foster. And I was unaware of this because I kind of came in and I'm an associate consultant. The other two associates don't have an MBA. There are other people in the firm. Not everyone has an MBA in the consulting firm. We have a very varied level of backgrounds. We even have one of our principals, I don't think, has any degrees. And so it's just a very nice diversity of backgrounds, which is what you want in a consulting company. And I was concerned. I was like, oh, well, I just got my MBA. Was it actually worth it? Like, what's the pros and cons? And then I found out about the 4 levels within the associate position, and I was like, okay, and me being promoted the double promotion, I was like, that is 100% due to my MBA. And I had a conversation with someone where I mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, I don't think the founder really cares about MBAs. He's like, no, he cares a lot about them. He brushes it off to your face so that you don't get a big head. But he had a conversation with him, and it was like, I trust Llyswen to do this work because of her MBA. I don't trust these other two to take on this client because they didn't have that experience. And so I think that was really beneficial. And so it means that I have been able to get, and so it's not that my clients are giving me more respect because I have an MBA. It's that I'm able to get better clients because I have an MBA. And that's a huge deal, because how you get promoted is being able to bill at certain rates, have those hours. Like if there's another associate right now, he's on the bench because there isn't any work right now, and his experience levels didn't meet the position that I'm in, because we were on the bench at the same time. So it could have been either one of us. From the client's perspective, they would have just been like, oh, associate consultant. But from Pepper Foster's perspective, they were like, no, we know that Llyswen has more experience, and that MBA gives her a little bit more credibility when it comes to those areas. So it's not that the client gives you more respect, it's that you get better positions. within the company.
And I think that's really important too, probably for folks to hear, particularly MBAs, around when they look for jobs. Like the job description might not require an MBA, but there are those kind of inside information or that inside level of promotion that you have to consider too.
There's a huge thing, especially if you're a younger MBA. I was one of the youngest MBAs in my cohort, and so I'd only had like 3 years of job experience before that, and I was already a young graduate, so I was a baby. And after like getting a job afterwards, you think, oh, I'm an MBA, I should be able to get all these like really high level jobs and jump into it. But because I didn't have the work experience, I wasn't able to jump into those higher paying and higher level positions that some of my other MBA cohort were, because they had 10 years of experience. However, because I have the MBA, promotions are now open and available to me later on in life, because you get to a point where after a certain level, you have to have that advanced degree in order to be promoted. And so that's where I'm like, okay, this is a benefit to me moving forward with my career.
Awesome. Well, that was our last question. So with that, we'll wrap up. But any final words?
Thank you very much, and happy to chat. Shannon has all of my information, so if anyone ever wants to have follow-up questions or one-on-ones or whatever, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Llyswen, and we're really excited that you were able to do this with us, and look forward to the future connections that we'll be able to continue. Everybody watching, thank you so much for watching this. The recording will be available hopefully within 1 to 2 weeks, so if you want to re-watch anything, you're welcome to. And then remember to come visit us if you're a business student, more career services. If you are not a business student, feel free to go to the University Career Center. They're also still supporting students virtually. So we're all here for you during this time. All right, with that.
Center, they're amazing.
Thank you. I did not ask her to say that either. So, all right, everybody have a good day.
Bye.